So before we start, I'd like to do something with you. If you can put both feet on the floor and just let go of everything. Close your eyes and breathe out 3 times. See yourself in a room. In the center of the room, there's a box full of balloons already blown up. Pick up a balloon of a color you really like. Take the balloon to the window or the door of the room. If it's not open, open it up. And allow the balloon to sweep you up and float up in the sky. Hover up here in the sky until you reach a place you really like. When you find that place, give the balloon string a little tag and land at the place you like. Notice the time of day. Feel the air on your skin. Enjoy being here. Take a deep breath and open your eyes. Anyone would like to tell me where they landed?
A tree house.
A tree house. Okay, what time of day was it?
It was late afternoon, kind of just before the sunset, but it's still warm.
Okay. Is the tree house, where is the tree house?
It's an imaginary tree house, just like in the countryside.
Okay.
At the top of the big tree.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else?
In the countryside with a river stream running past greenery.
Perfect. What time of day?
Noon.
Noon. One more person?
Oh, I didn't land.
You didn't land. Okay, that's okay. And so when I said land in a place you really like, what did you see? And I said, what time? Notice time of day. Feel the air on your skin.
In some ways, it just went up, and it was just the movement which I enjoyed. So the space and the movement.
Okay, so you might have landed like in a cloud sort of thing, or in the sky. I mean, you. Okay, what was the light? I'm interested in the light.
It was actually dark blue, so very dark blue.
Very dark blue. Someone said that's very like you. Okay.
More ground, more up in the clouds, I guess.
The fact that the light quality is a little unusual. So I'm not sure because I wasn't in your image, so I don't know. So I'll take one more if anybody's willing to volunteer because he's the beach. What time of day?
1 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Island.
Excellent. All right. What this shows us, the general thing with you being a slight exception because of the light quality, healing requires, I said, land in a space you really like. Healing requires space and light. These are components of healing. Without space, without light, there's no healing. Okay, so everything we do is really geared to providing space and light for the person. Okay, all the needles, all the technique, that's kind of like in some ways secondary. Okay, now this class is really about all this secondary this stuff, but just to keep in mind. So the reason I'm a little bit kind of curious about why it was a little darker is because every so often you get someone who says, oh, I landed in some cave, I'm making that up, a cave with scorpions and snakes, okay, dark cave. You know, it's like, wow, that's unusual. Something wrong. No, you didn't. You landed in a place with space.
I think it's more that I do a lot of meditation. So it's almost like, well, I just thought, okay, there's a suggestion.
Ah, okay. Yes.
Like, oh, this is what's happening, so that's fine.
Got you.
And it was the spaciousness of it which I enjoyed.
Yeah. Yeah, you got with the spaciousness, and that space is really what we're aiming to give people. Okay, so just kind of to remember that when we do all this technical stuff and it gets very nitty-gritty, at the end of the day, it may not matter so much. You know, it's very nice to be able to direct treatments to a specific place and to get specific results. But at the end of the day, providing space and light, and I'll add to it a third component, which is knowledge of new possibilities. Okay? If someone's stuck and says, well, I can't get better, well, it's going to be a little hard to move them. And usually people who come to you are people, they've already said, I believe it's possible to move away from where I am. Okay, so they hopefully have the knowledge of new possibilities. The obvious exception are the 70-year-old men who come with the wives. The wife believes there's a knowledge of new possibility. The husband, who's the actual patient, does not necessarily believe that. So and as you know, those are often the more difficult people to treat. Just because, it's like, I'm getting the medical history from your wife. I'm getting everything from your wife. It's like, is there a patient here? Are you here? Okay. In this class, there's we call this class something about postural alignment. Okay, so in some ways, that's the theme of the class. Okay, now what does it mean, postural alignment? So we say in Chinese medicine, we say that there's 5 phases, or 5 organs. I mean, we talk about 6, but really it's, in a sense, it's 5. Okay? And that, in TCM often, everything is like, is it spleen, is it liver, is it excess deficient? It's like we like this thing. Now, 5 elements or 5 phases in Chinese is called what? Anybody?
Wuxing.
Wuxing is half correct. That's not totally correct. Wuxing meaning 5 steps, but it's actually, wuxing is not really the expression. The expression is yin-yang wuxing. Okay, the 5 methods of 5 formations of steppings or walkings through yin-yang. Okay, so it's not this. It's important to sort of consider that, because what comes primary is yin-yang. Okay, the interaction of yin-yang, and within this interaction, you have the yin, the yang from within the yin, that's the wood. Okay, from the deepest of yin, you have the yang that starts to come out, so that's wood. And then you have the full yang, which is fire. You have the contraction, the yin from within the yang, which is the metal. And then you have the yin of the yin, which is the water. And then you have the earth that modulates between all 4. So it's in the center, but because it's hard, where's the hardest movement for most people? Okay, with the exception of some meditators. The hardest movement, usually, most people complain, when you're moving from full summer to fall, you're starting to contract. That's when we sort of go, oh, this doesn't feel so fabulous. I think I need a little boost. Okay, most people, when March comes, it's kind of like, whoops, oh, good. We're moving. We're going somewhere. Okay, very few people complain. I mean, you may have allergies, okay, when things are blooming. But most people feel, wow, this is cool. I'm glad that this is moving. Most people, it's in the fall that they need help. Okay, and that's why we choose to put earth between fire and metal. Okay, because that's where you need the transition is the hardest. Okay, so if we're going to make it a circle, earth can't be in the center anymore. It can't be in the center. The center is implied, of course. So when we're making the 5 phases in one circle, the earth is put between fire and metal. But these phases, they're phases of yin-yang, which means yin-yang is most primary, okay, to everything. Okay. Now, what is yin-yang in a human body? Okay, so I mean, we still have to take it away from, philosophy and make it relevant to us. So what is the yin-yang interaction in the body? Okay, now you can say front and back, and that would to some extent be correct, but it's kind of debatable, which is yin and which is yang. Okay, yang is the sunny side of the mountain, yin is the shady side. Okay, so if I'm standing and I'm moving forward, this actually would be my yang side. If I'm, and if I'm lying down on my back, this will become my yin side. So it depends. And you can see with the 3 yang channels that it's not clear front and back, which is yin and yang. You have taiyang, shaoyang, yangming. Okay? There is sort of an assumption that the front is more yin, but that's not really totally correct in a sense. So front back doesn't quite cut it. But top and bottom is very clear because we say man is between heaven and earth. This is how we define. We say there's the Chinese love threes. Okay, so there's earth and heaven, and in between is man. Right? That's a very famous expression. Okay, that man, human, mediates between heaven and earth. Heaven and earth. Okay, so the ability to mediate between the two, to create the space between the two, is going to be more important, in my opinion, than the 5 organs. Okay, so many of us have learned, well, not many of us, we've all learned to diagnose the organ, as if that's primary. What I'm going to propose is creating the space. Now, what is that space is going to be debatable. You can call it the Ren and the Du, you can call it the Chang, you can give it different names. Okay? But creating that space so that there are organs and that they can do something is going to be extremely important, more important than anything. This is an expression that comes in the Heart Sutra, and it says, the Bodhisattva Avalokita shed light on the 5 skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, she overcame ill-being. I highlighted 2 characters there. The Jiao, this is the same character as kidney 6, Jiao Hai, okay, to illuminate, to shed light. And Ku, okay, Ku, this is the grass, this is 10. Okay, a grass that's been around 10 times. Ku basically means bitter. Those of you who do herbs, ku shen, the herb, the bitter herb. The bitter root is literally what ku shen means. Bitter is ku. Okay, this means a grass that's been around a long time. Okay, 10 is just a number. It's kind of irrelevant. They could have said 30. Okay, but so it's been around. What happens when the grass has been, well, in England it might be a little hard to tell because you have a lot of moisture in the summer as well. But if you come, I live in north of Boston in New England, and we have a lot of rain in the summer, but it's a lot hotter. So things, by August, they kind of become withered. And then later on, by the end of September, because a frost starts to come in, they really withered. So there's a withering effect that happens to something that's been around for a long time, and therefore it's bitter. It's no longer tasty. It's no longer springy. Like wheatgrass juice. You may not like it, but it's fresh. So there's a freshness missing. That's what it means, bitter. So literally, ku means bitter and distress. Okay? The ku, I think I may have gotten it reversed. The character's reversed here. No, I didn't. Okay. So this is ku, and this is The reason why I'm doing this is so you can see an expression of what is disease. Okay, she overcame disease. Okay, I have to look at what is the character for disease. The character for disease, in this case, you can say disease in many, many, many ways. Okay, there's many other ways to look at it. So one is bitter, meaning I'm withering. There's a shrinking effect as you've been around for a long time, and the grass is withering and becomes bitter. There's no juice in it, so there's no space. And then the distress, literally, it shows you someone bending over, okay? It literally shows that. So with time, things start to collapse. And this is this bitterness and distress. Okay, that's literally what it shows. In other words, now, so what the Heart Sutra is saying, by the way, the Heart Sutra is not a medical text, okay? Just so that there's clarity around it. So how do I overcome this ill being? That I've just defined that ill being is this thing, like this. How do I overcome it? I need to shed light. Now, clearly, Avalokita, by the way, Avalokita or Guanyin is the symbol of medicine in China. Okay, that's why it's kind of worthwhile looking at. Yes, it's a nice Zen text, but it's not meant to be medical. It's just in my interest, I'm looking at it. How do you shed light in the body? That's the medicine. Okay, she shed light on the 5 skandhas, meaning the 5 components of the human being. It's kind of irrelevant. That's one of those Buddhist terms. Found that they're all interdependent and therefore overcame ill-being. So the whole process starts with shedding light. If I want to do this from an acupuncturist perspective, okay, how do I shed light? Well, there's a place, kidney 6, that is called shedding light on the ocean of life. Okay? Jiao Hai, illuminating ocean is how you normally translate it. Okay? So if I use kidney 6, I can conceivably, that's my theory right now, I can overcome ill-being. Okay, everybody stand up and let's see if this cute theory is actually correct. What I want you to do is, this is called the heel. I know this sounds like English. The heel, and this is called the ankle bone. Okay? You're going to take the heel and push it down. You're going to take the ankle bone and pull it up. Now, the tendency when you do that is going to be push the heel down, lift the ankle bone away, but watch out that what you want, as you lift the ankle bone away, most of you are going to want to roll over to the bladder channel. Okay, that's going to be natural. Okay? So what you need to do is push spleen 3 into the floor and resist the tendency to go towards UB65. And spread the toes and send the heel down, lift the ankle bone up. And don't try too hard because otherwise you'll try and do this. Okay. Do you feel your inner thighs by doing that? Fabulous. Anybody not feeling your inner thighs? Okay, good. Now take that, feel as if there's a straw between your thighs where you just felt it, and suck it into your perineum and feel the whole front of the spine as much as you can. Everybody's going to be different. From the opening of kidney 6, try and see if you can feel the front of the spine somewhere, maybe towards REN 22. Is that an option? Yes? No? Keep activating kidney 6. Most of us will get stuck somewhere. All right. Let go. All right. You can sit down. What you found out is that your upright posture starts at kidney 6, has a lot to do with separating the heel and the ankle bone. Is that fair? You actually felt it in your body, I hope, because if not, let me know. I want to make sure that you do. Okay, so in other words, the meridians actually have a real, they're real. They're not some nice thing that some Chinese wrote and said, oh, let me draw some meridians. They do have a physicality to them. Okay, so the activation of kidney 6 or sending energy down is going to allow a lifting up as well. Okay, that's going to create space in the torso. That's going to be very important. Okay. One more concept. In Ling Shu 33, there is a description of the 4 oceans. And in it, it says that when you have, there's an ocean of chi, an ocean of grain, an ocean of blood, and an ocean of marrow. Okay, you've heard of these terms, right? So in each of the oceans, if there's too much, it's not good. If there's too little, it's not good. With the exception of the ocean of marrow. If there's too much marrow, it's actually a good thing. If there's too little marrow, it's not a good thing. Okay? If there's a lot of marrow, what is the result? Qing Jing Duo Li, meaning you'll be easeful, strong, and or sturdy rather, and with lots of strength. Okay? Now this character Qing is what interests me. Light, that it's light. So again, from the meditator's perspective, a lot of this really does come from a different tradition altogether. Qing means light, to be easeful, to be light, not light as in what you see, but light as in light as a feather sort of thing. So the often, it's expressed as Qing An, An meaning peaceful, easeful and peaceful. Okay, the opposite of that. Okay, often. So, for example, if I say to you, ease, what's the opposite of easeful in English? Unease, or that you're the first person ever who came. No. That's very interesting for me. That's cool. I like that. But he said tense. That's. I'm not even sure if that's totally correct, but no, I like the fact that you used a word that's not in a negative, because what was the other option that we just had? Unease. It's not an expression an American would use, unfortunately. Usually we'll say restless. And in the meditation, in the Buddhist meditation literature, what we find is, often you would, in street language, you would say bu'an, lack of peace. Okay? In almost, the reason I'm interested in what you said was, it's generally speaking, people would use a negative word and they'll negate something. So it's restlessness. Okay? So it's interesting that you found something that's, that has its own term. And it seems to be like that in almost every language. That the opposite of ease is something, we're describing it in the negative. In the meditation literature, okay, we're actually defining, so it will be restlessness as in excited. It's not easeful, but as you can tell, excited, just like tense, is not exactly the same as opposite of ease. But that's what they're saying is the opposite. In that opposite, the opposite is defined as jiaoju, and it's the Ju character that's interesting to me because it has to do with this lift. So it's actually composed, I know it doesn't look like it. This is the main part of this character. Now this thing is the same as Shen. This is the character for Shen, what you call spirit. Something that came down from heaven and got extended. This to extend, I know this to you looks like I wrote center and added a line. And that's exactly how you write it. It's absolutely true. However, the etymology of this is not, is not from center. It actually comes from, it's like two hands, squeeze them together to extend something. Okay? So in here, in this character, you can see these two hands pulling up to extend something, to lift. You dropped, you lift is restlessness. Okay? You will not have ease if you don't have a lift in your body. Okay? You dropped the lift. Okay? By dropping the lift, you now no longer have ease. Where does this lift come from? It somehow comes from the sides. Okay? And that's really the theme of this, that's what I'm going to try and see if I can show you that as a theme in people. This is where Shaoyang comes in very strongly. The Shaoyang is the side channel, right? Gallbladder, Sanjiao. Interestingly, has anybody ever thought about it? And I'm just, throwing these out to you as suggestions for your own meditations. I'm not trying to suggest solutions necessarily. I have my own ideas, and they can change all the time. Okay? How come the Sanjiao is a Shaoyang channel? I mean, just to think of the connections. The Sanjiao is a Shaoyang channel, but the Sanjiao itself is a what? How is the Sanjiao defined? It's the coordination of three. It talks about three spaces. Now, the Sanjiao is the three heaters are a little bit different than the three dantians. Okay, but it's still the same idea. So the three heaters are below the navel, between the navel and the ribs. Okay, that's the Sanjiao. The three dantians are, you have the lower dantian, the upper dantian between the collarbones and the navel. And then you have the, middle dantian. And then you have the upper dantian, which is in the head and the neck. Okay, so they are different. They're not exactly equivalent. Okay, but there is some similarity in the concept of dividing us in three ways. So the sanjiao is the coordination of the three spaces in the body, okay, however you define them. The definition of, neither definition is perfect, whether you use the dantians or the jiaos. It's not quite correct. For me, the definition is going to be between the perineum and the ribs, that's just me, and the diaphragm, between the diaphragm and the vocal cords, between the vocal cords and the head and the top of the head. Why? Because you have a diaphragm here, you have a diaphragm in the perineum, which you basically just experienced when you when you opened kidney 6 up by throwing the heel down and lifting the ankle bone away. You feel the perineum lift, the spongy tissue of the perineum lift, creates a further lift. And it will end up in the vocal cords. And, so those of you who might be practicing yoga and you know what Ujjayi breath is, it's creating the space in the vocal cord. So there is an extra, it's like a diaphragm here that can lift in the throat. So for me, the spaces that I'm interested in as three spaces are below between these diaphragms of the perineum and the lung diaphragm, between the lung diaphragm and the vocal cords, and above that. Okay, that's the thing, Now, you might ask, how come the limbs are not involved? The limbs are not part, whereas the head is part of the torso, even though it appears to be separated. If you look at pre-amphibian life, okay, if you look at fish, and we did come from fish, okay, the head is part of the torso. Later, we developed the ability, as we developed the limbs as well, we developed a fifth limb, okay, which is going to be another very important concept, which is the neck. Because in acupuncture we say, the most important points are, not all of us say that, but some people, it's a very common phrase, all the important points are below the elbows, below the knees, right? I'm going to suggest to you that the neck has the equivalent or even more important possibility of that. Okay, that the dynamics of this, which is the beginning of the channel, and the purpose of this dynamics is to affect the torso. I'm going to suggest to you that the neck is as important or more important. And you see that in the Ling Shu, it appears twice, this definition. When the Ling Shu, it talks about all the points below the ankles and below the elbows and the knees, and it just names them. And then it names what the worldly people like to call windows of the sky. By the way, that is not a classical expression. There is a point called windows of the sky, okay? But Tian Chuang, but that's the whole grouping of it is not called that way. But it's okay. It doesn't matter. But that concept does exist very clearly in the Ling Shu. After it talks about 4 limbs, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, it talks about a 5th limb. It suddenly, out of nowhere, starts talking about all these points in the neck. But it's in the same chapter that it talks about the 5 shu points, the luo point, the shi cleft point, blah, blah point, So it's like clearly the neck has the same importance or something in the dynamics of the neck. So I'm going to suggest to you that the neck, sometimes we call this hara diagnosis, and people often say to me, Avi, what do you do when somebody says there's nothing in the abdomen or it's a pregnant woman? You can't go diagnose on the abdomen, right? You go to the neck. The neck might be more important even than the abdomen. Okay, might be. I'm not saying that it is. Don't overdo it, but but just to keep that in mind. But the coordination of these 3 spaces belongs to the sanjiao. We started there, right? The sanjiao is in a shaoyang. The shaoyang is it's the side, it's the thing that squeezes, that allows you to have an upright posture. Okay. Now, there'll be many things that allow you to have upright posture. So I don't want you to take from, I mean, if you take from this class, Shaoyang allows you to have an upright posture. I should do Shaoyang on everyone. Fine, that's cool. And I'll show you tricks to do that. And at one point, I'll tell you, if you only learn this, that's a good thing. That would be a good thing. But there, what I really want you to get is that it's all mixture of interactions. So, for example, it's the interaction of how you heal works. And do you remember that the one thing you needed to do is take spleen 3 and keep it on the ground? That if you didn't do that, there's an arch between spleen 3 and UB65, correct? There's an arch in the foot that there's this arch and then there's this arch. Okay, so this arch is extremely important. The idea that the shoe points, aren't they the line of that arch? Right? The shoe points are what? One of the definitions of the shoe point is what? I mean, shoe means to transport, meaning transport between, making the connection between the exterior, between the meridian and the organs. That's kind of one of the definitions of the shoe points, right? So let's look at these shoe points. And those of you who have studied with Kiiko, you'll see very clearly that, she's done the Jue points, right? Okay, this is basically very similar to the idea of the Jue points, because actually what you're pushing to the ground is the Jue points. Okay, now we don't know how Maruyama came up with, this is called Jue point. So this idea, behind the shoe points, we have something we call Jue points. There was a Japanese moxibustionist actually, whose name was Maruyama, who said, he called these Jue points, he said that has an influence on the whole channel. But it also has a lot to do with this character of Jue, which you know as fainting or stroke symptom. Okay, it has something to do with when you're walking, you're falling. Okay, and so there's a whole bunch of different kinds of systems that are trying to say, for example, there's wrist and ankle acupuncture. And you're trying to say, if you do this point, you're affecting the whole, that whole meridian, the whole Shaoyang or the whole Tai Yin or the whole blah, blah. So he has a similar thing, and he says they're under the shoe points. Okay, so the thing about the shoe, so you're starting, and I do not draw very well. That's your foot. That's the arch. Okay, so you're starting with spleen 3. Okay, spleen 3, liver 3, stomach 42, 43, 43, gallbladder 41 or 42, depending on how you want to look at it, and UB65, correct? Okay, spleen 3 is called Tai Bai. Okay, the great white. It's not so simple, because what this white means is it's the sun coming up. Okay, white is the sun coming up. Okay, this is the sun, and this is something. So the sun is coming up. In other words, there's a surge upwards when the sun comes up. It's surging upwards. The light surges upwards. So if you want to surge upwards, you have to keep spleen 3 on the floor, right? Otherwise, if you let spleen 3 off the floor, okay, you're going to walk on the bladder channel. There's not going to be a lot of up in your body. You're going to sink. You've got to activate the spleen part of the arch, either spleen 3 or spleen 4, in order to have some sort of upwardness. Liver 3, okay, so I said, okay, activate spleen 3, but really also liver 3 is involved. It's called Tai Chang. Chang means to surge. Okay, same as Chang channel. Okay, it's the great Chang, the great surging. Okay, to surge upwards, you've got to activate liver 3, kidney 3. Okay. Now, in a lot of Qigong Tai Chi people will talk only about Yang Chuan, only about kidney 1. Okay. I'm trying to move it to a whole area, but it's the same idea. Okay. Then you're getting to now what we're doing is we're getting to more in the yang shoe points. And what we're getting is stomach 42 is called the sinking valley, xiangu. Okay, it's something that comes, the water comes over into a hole. Okay, so as you're surging, you also have to start collecting. Because if you just surge upwards, you're just going to end up there. There has to be a certain gathering. Okay, gallbladder 41, Zuling Qi, is, they say it's shedding tears. It's the same name as there's a gallbladder point at the top. That's, sorry, it is for, no, it's not. No, 15 is, it doesn't matter. It's one of the ones here. Who cares what the number is? If you say, I think 13 is Ben Shen though, so it's probably 15. Whatever number it is, it's something here. It's like 13, 15, no. Someone out here. It's the same name, but the shedding tears really means to face the tears. Okay, it's really the character of a person facing, and what this facing means, it has both the reclining and the standing. So it somehow promotes the idea that in gallbladder 41 that there has to be a coordination between the vertical and the horizontal. So you asked me, like how come gallbladder 41 opens the Dai channel? Yeah. Like where did they come with this thing? And I think because Daimai is the only non-vertical channel, and gallbladder 41 has that character of reclining as well as upright. Okay, and finally you have UB65, which has the character for gathering. What's the character? Okay, shugu, meaning to bundle up the bone. Okay, so you have to collect. You see how the three yang names have something that collects, the sinking valley, the hole that collects the water that comes down as it sinks. Okay, and the bundling and there's just something, you've got to collect it. Okay, you can't just surge it up. You have to rule it in. I think it's the correct expression. Okay, so that comes from the feet. So that area of the foot, of spleen 3, liver 3, etc., is extremely important in how we activate the legs. What you'll see on most people come out, when they come to your clinic, they're walking like this. There's no action in you see it here too, but there's no, you'll see something else here. Now, I'm just doing the total flop, okay? They're just totally down. There's just nothing there. There's no action in their legs. And often as a result, because there's nothing, they can't use their legs, what are they going to do? They're going to hold themselves up here. So rather than looking like they're totally flopping here, often they'll come in. They're all tense here or somewhere because they've got to lift themselves up from somewhere because they can't find what some of your Pilates people will call the core. They don't have the core strength. But the core strength is not in your abdomen. Your core strength comes from your legs. Okay, the activation of the leg is going to be very important. Okay, so that's our theme. Okay, now you saw this thing of coming from the sides. I have one very favorite point for this. So if I'm trying to trace how to create that upward lift, it's going to start with kidney 6. It's going to come between the legs to a point that we call inner yin, which is basically liver with liver 9, but on the kidney channel. I've basically created the kidney channel. Remember when we pressed the heel down, okay, and lifted the ankle bone, we felt the inner thigh, the front of the spine. Isn't that what the kidney channel description is? Do you remember when you were in school and there's a description of the kidney channel? It starts at the little toe, it comes through, circles at the ankle, comes through the inner thigh, comes into the perineum, comes up the front of the spine, and then we're all going, because there is the description of the channel and the points don't match, right? Do you remember that? You've probably all wondered about that. It's supposed to go from the pubic bone to the navel up to here, right? That's what it's supposed to do. But the description clearly says, comes up to the perineum, goes up the front of the spine into Ming Men, goes down to the kidney and the bladder, then goes up from the navel and circles the throat. It ends up circling the throat. So if we're looking at what we did when we activated kidney 6, we felt the inside of the thigh, the front of the spine, all the way to the throat. That's the activation of the kidney channel. So the challenge for all of us is, can we actually create these channels in our body? I'm not saying you can every single one, and different ones of us will be able to do different things because we all have different bodies and different capacities. These channels were not created by one person. Okay, this is a system that got evolved over many years. We have the advantage of we don't have to invent it from scratch. It's kind of very nice. It's very convenient. Like, thank you, people of 2,000 years ago, letting us experiment with this. But we may not be able to do it all, partially because they haven't left us enough footprints. You know, it's kind of, we have to guess a lot of this stuff. But my challenge to you is to start guessing, to start playing, to start experimenting. Okay? That, to me, is a lot more important than all the technical stuff that we're going to start doing in a moment. So the activation of the kidney channel, and what we're seeing in this activation is the front of the spine and the throat. So we're literally seeing the channel itself. And what we're seeing is that this idea that it goes kidney 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 is wrong. That is not correct. The channel actually goes in the front of the spine. What happens is there's a branch, Avi's opinion, that goes downwards, kidney 16 to 15, 13, blah, 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 down to 11. The direction is actually here, and from 16 there's a branch that goes up. That's my understanding. And we'll see that it's going to be very important in a moment when we talk about adrenal reflex. Why does adrenal reflex show in kidney 16 or below kidney 16? All right? Any questions up to now? That was the theoretical foundation for what we're doing. So the other important point coming from the sides, we call mushu, Kiiko might call dantian slice. You take Ren 4, take it all the way to the side, below gallbladder 26 is here, level with the navel. But if I take gallbladder 26, take it down, it becomes level with Ren 4. That we call mushu, between the mu and the shu. Okay? Sorry, I hope that didn't do anything to the... no, there's amplifier there. So between the mu and the shu is mushu. Okay? Now, it's a joke that only works apparently in America. Okay, because in America we have what's called mushu fried vegetables, Chinese fried vegetables. That's not what, there's no Chinese has ever heard of mushu. Okay, this is not the expression that people in China use. So I don't know why, why Americans created this expression, like we created burritos or something like that. We created mushu. But, so it's between the mu and the shu, we call mushu point. But you can call it dantian slice. You can also call it, by the way, gallbladder 27 or 28. Okay, because currently in textbooks, and by the way, originally, gallbladder channel goes in, here, on the inguinal ligament. But there are some textbooks that show the gallbladder channel just going straight on the side. And if you do that, gallbladder 27 will be here. Okay. Now, gallbladder 27 and 28, they're called Wei Dao, the way to link things, and Wu Shu, the 5 pivots. Okay. First of all, once you have a pivot, and certainly once you have the number 5, it makes you sort of go, whoops. So, I mean, most of us would go, gallbladder 27, 28, oh, it's one of those points, like, oh, liver 6, who knows where it is? Like, who cares? It's one of those, they don't exist in our vocabulary. But once you start looking, it's like, wow, there must be some importance there to this, the linking, the way to link. I mean, this whole thing is about linking. Creating an upright posture by linking the body. Like we have this body, and if there's no linking, then it's just kind of like a blob that doesn't mean anything. So linking is very important. And 5 pivots, okay, that must be something very important. So the support of the body can come either from your inguinal ligament or, in my opinion, totally from the side. Now, Okay, so this is going to be one of my favorite points, this mushu business. Okay, and then to end it, you'll either have stomach 9, whose name is welcome human being, okay, Zhen Ying, okay, or where a lot of people will hold tension, or in some other cases, I might use something under the teeth, or I might use UB2. It's all going to depend on, Nagano said that UB2 is the upper, it represents the upper dantian, just like, lower dantian is represented by Ren 3, upper dantian, middle dantian is represented by Ren 17, the meeting point for Qi, and UB2 for Nagano was representing the upper dantian, which for some people they say yin tang would be. Okay, but that was his equivalent. This idea of using UB2, it comes from, just so you can see, different people manipulate the classics differently. Okay, UB1, okay, is called Mingmen. In the Ling Shu, the character for Mingmen appears 4 times, but it's really twice because each time that it appears, it repeats itself. Okay, and both description of the bladder channel, it has to do with root and branch kind of thing, and it talks about that it goes into Ming Men. Ming Men is in the eye. That's why Ming Men appears twice. It goes to Ming Men. Ming Men is in the eyes. And that sentence appears twice in the Ling Shu. Okay? So Ming Men is in the eye. Therefore, it must be UB1. Okay? But who wants to needle UB1? So, not very nice. So UB2 is a kind of more convenient place to needle. Okay? So that's kind of like one of those situations where you can see a protocol to sort of create the space. Okay, but we'll look at it because it's really a lot more complex than just, I told you, don't take things as it's just this. Don't take it, it's just Shaoyang creates the upright posture. Many things create the upright posture, including that arch of the shoe points. Okay, so just to give some reverence to the fact that there's so many ideas, so many things come together to create this body. Okay? All right. Everything okay up to now? Okay. Let's talk about what this technique is about. Okay, so many of you have heard, and it was probably, that what we do is we palpate abdomen. Okay, so let me just, I'm going to go into the handout. Okay. We palpate abdomen and we diagnose from the abdomen. If you have pressure pain here, it means X. If you have pressure pain here, it means Y. If you have X, do these points. If you have Y, do these points. That's kind of a nice way to say this is what this technique is. And to a large extent, it looks like that. It's very similar to diagnosing from the pulse. You say, oh, the pulse, classically there's 21 qualities for the pulse, and according to the quality of the pulse, I can come up with a diagnosis, right? That's the idealized version. How many of you can distinguish between 21 pulses? No takers, okay. Agreed. Now, the truth is that there's a lot more than 21 pulses. It's more complex than just that, okay? But from those 21 pulses, we start making ideas, figuring out ideas and saying, oh, you have this, you have this, you have this. And it's in this position of the pulse. It's in the spleen, it's in the liver, it's in the blah, blah. And we arrive at some decision of what your diagnosis is. Okay? Same thing in the abdomen. It's not, you can't say you have a soft pulse, therefore you are a blah, blah. Or you have a rapid pulse, therefore you have heat. No, it depends on other factors. What else do you have? So this idea of you have pressure pain here, yeah, that's true. You have pressure pain here. It probably means that, but that's the beginning of the diagnosis, okay? If you look at page 3 of this handout, and the reason I'm pointing this out, this was actually very convenient that it all came on one page. If you really want to sort of say, well, I have the basics, you memorize this page. Now you have to memorize how to treat it, granted, but you can just make notes on how. Then you've basically got the whole technique down. You don't have to do anything else. So that's kind of cool. Okay, so just know that it's there. We're not going to go into that right this second. before I palpate anybody's abdomen, generally speaking, and I will show you the exception in this class also, I don't start palpating abdomen. The first thing I'm interested in is their medical history. Okay, I'm not palpating anybody, hopefully, unless I know why are you here? What are you doing here? Okay, and it's like, what's the point of treating if you don't know what you're treating? Now I know some Japanese styles promote this idea that you can take someone's pulse. Toyohari people are very big into it. You take the pulse and you balance the pulse. And if you balance the pulse, everything is fine. It's like, you can't have that much reverence to the pulse or to anything and ignore the whole picture at the same time. I mean, you kind of said that the pulse gives you the whole picture, and you're not willing to acknowledge that there might be a bigger picture than the pulse. In my opinion, that's not quite correct. Okay, I'm not saying the pulse is not important. Okay, just like I'm not saying the abdomen is not important. Whatever tool you want to use to diagnose is fine with me. I don't care how you do it. You can do it from diagnosing the nails. It really doesn't matter to me. Okay? The point is that there's a whole picture to be considered. Okay? So my first step in getting the whole picture is I want to know what happened to you in your life. It's important. You may say, I have shoulder pain. My right shoulder is painful. Well, the treatment is going to be a little different. And it came from the same place. Two people come in. I went, I was rowing, and the boat went this way and I got stuck with my right shoulder. Okay? Well, there were 10 other rowers on your boat, right? And only you have this thing. How come? There's something in your history. Did you have appendix removed, for example? The appendix is on the right side. It's, by the way, very typical. People with appendix, 20, 30 years later, they develop gallstones. Not everyone, but lots of them do. Okay? The inflammatory process moves upwards, even though the appendix is removed. Okay? Because what they didn't remove is they didn't remove the reason why they had appendix problem. Okay? They just removed the appendix. So there's nowhere for that process to manifest anymore. Okay? Then they start developing gallbladder problems, and then they develop shoulder problems on the right side. Very typical. They'll have gallbladder 21 pain. It's very typical. We call this gallbladder 21 pain, we call liver gallbladder overacting on spleen kind of thing. It's just an expression. Okay? So we fix that with spleen 9. Our spleen 9, by the way, needled upwards. The reason I'm saving it now is so that if you take these as little, you go, oh, wow, I have this patient gallbladder 21 pain, I'll do spleen 9. Don't do it towards gallbladder 34. Do it upwards. Okay, just like you might do lung 7 downwards. It's the same sort of angle, totally under the skin. Okay, I'll show you all that. Where were we? Okay, so if the person had appendix, therefore right side shoulder pain, they had a weakness waiting to happen when the boat rowing thing happened. It exacerbated it. If I just treat the shoulder, maybe they get better. Maybe they get better on the table, but maybe the next day it comes back. The worst thing you can have is a patient who comes in and gets great results on the table, and the next day they wake up and they go, oh, it's all back. It's the disappointment factor, isn't it? They're just going to resent you. Because, think about it. If it happens once, they go, wow, this guy's a genius. I need to come back. But if it happens 3 or 4 times, they go, this guy's a charlatan. They make me feel good for 20 minutes or for, 5 hours or whatever the amount of time is. And then it's like, it all comes back. It's a waste of my money. That's not a patient who's going to refer anyone, because it's just not, it's not enticing enough. Okay? So treating the medical history is going to be important because that's going to make the treatment last longer. Okay? So the principle of how we treat is look at the medical history. Treat the medical history first, then treat the symptom. There's a good chance that if you did a good job with the medical history, the symptom will go away. Now, not everybody's shoulder pain is associated, on the right side, is associated with their liver or their appendix or anything of that nature, but it might be. So check it out. Okay? So look at the medical history and address it. Okay, so that's the first thing I do, is take out the medical history. My advice to you is do not talk to them about the medical history. Do not ask them. You can talk to them about it. Have them write it down first, preferably at home. Okay, no, it's like, you know, the people who fill out forms. And this is the beautiful thing about websites. On my website, here's the intake form. Can you fill it in and come in filled up already? I don't want to wait 20 minutes until you think, was it when I was 31 or 32? Did I have my ovary scraped first, or was my ovary removed first? Well, I think it was scraped first, by the way. You know, it's like, I mean, patients don't remember. You know, think about yourself. How many people, you know, you treat them and they leave and they say, by the way, can you also treat my blah, blah? It's like, not now. You're leaving, you know. It's like they remember too late. It's very common. You know, nobody can remember everything happened to them in their lives. It's natural. Okay? So you want to get their medical history, preferably in bullet form for me. I don't read people's handwritings very well to begin with. It's just give it a name, we'll talk about it. Now that you have a picture of what happened to them medically speaking, now you can palpate abdomen. Now, when you palpate abdomen, now every Japanese acupuncturist has to pay reverence to the abdomen. It's a little bit like the Chinese, who have to describe the tongue and the pulse. Now, are you aware that many TCM schools in China no longer have pulse diagnosis on the curriculum? Okay, that's the standard now. It's too complex. Why bother? Okay. However, read every description of a case study that comes out of China. It will have a tongue, a symptom, a tongue, a pulse, a differential diagnosis. Excuse me, I had to do that. So, and then it will have a principle of treatment. Okay, this is the way they're written. This is a cultural thing. This is how the Chinese do it. And then you have a list of herbs. And very often the list of herbs and the differential diagnosis and the principle of treatment do not match at all. You know, it's kind of like, wait a second, I thought this person had dampness and the main thing was clearing dampness, and all the herbs here have to do with clearing heat or whatever. That's totally fine. We don't scrutinize that stuff. No, because they're showing you, just like with acupuncture, there are tricks that are certain herbs and certain herb combinations work together well, and they do a good job, regardless of the principle of treatment. You know, that's a nice theory. But what it shows us is in China, you have to show pulse, you have to show tongue. You know, whether you really did them or not, whether you cared about them or not, doesn't matter. In Japan, same thing. You have to show picture of the abdomen. They love to draw pictures of abdomen and show you. And everyone who writes a book is going to say, you know, in this principle, you know, if you have dampness on this area, you have pressure pain in this area. But I go to these people and I study with them, and I'm looking at what they're actually doing. The vast majority of Japanese practitioners do it from the pulse. They check the abdomen because they have to. And the way they check the abdomen is like this. It's not, what we do is much deeper. Okay, I'm not saying good or bad, I'm just saying it's different. Okay, don't misunderstand me. Okay, the big difference in what we do, the Kiiko style, is we keep checking the abdomen. We don't check it up front and it's done. We arrived at a diagnosis. So diagnosis is a very dynamic thing for us. So we palpate abdomen. Now we poke, you should be able to get up to about the depth of the first knuckle in. So it's not light, it's invasive. This comes from the Western medical the old Western medical model, okay, where you actually poke around. This is not superficial. I use 3 fingers, so I'm poking with all 3 fingers, but it's my pericardium finger that I'm feeling with the most, okay?